It is 10 o'clock. Good morning. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Lots of breaking news this morning. Matt Norlander of CBS Sports reporting that Baylor head coach Scott Drew has passed on Kentucky basketball's offer. He will remain the head coach of the Baylor Bears. And Kentucky's search to replace John Calipari continues on as the entire state of Tennessee has a good laugh. Yesterday, Titans head coach Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator Nick Holtz, and defensive coordinator Denard Wilson met with the media to kick off the offseason program. And Brian Callahan says the team is starting from square one with the new coaching staff.
This first week in particular is an orientation is the best way to put it. We're trying to lay out expectations, guidelines, what we want our team to look like. And you start at the very basics. You make no assumptions that even though these guys have all played a long time, we started with teaching how we're going to get in the huddle.
Also this morning, the family of OJ Simpson announced the news of his death today on social media, posting the following statement. On April 10th, our father, Orenthal James Simpson, succumbed to his battle with cancer. He was surrounded by children and grandchildren during this time of transition. His family asks that you respect their wishes for privacy and grace. Signed, the Simpson family. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Oh no, Kentucky fans. What's happened to you this morning? A little bit of breaking news to start the show. Lucas had it in his update. A lot of breaking news to start the show. But the news that's most relevant to us, Matt Norlander, CBS Sports Insider, breaking. Scott Drew has passed on Kentucky's offer and will remain at Baylor, source tells CBS Sports. The way that you cackled like some kind of witch back there when Will Bowling announced that news as they were wrapping up the morning show just a few moments ago, it warmed my soul in ways that I can't describe. I think you and I have never been more on the same page about anything in over 3 years at this point than laughing at Kentucky fans today.
Will did a good job of kind of hanging it in suspense for a moment where he said, Matt Norlander reports Scott Drew is, and we were frozen back here, me, you, and Robert, and he said, staying at Baylor. And just the joy that washed through my body as the entire fan base of Big Blue Nation experiences something completely different washing over them.
I know how this feels. I understand.
Oh, me too, bud. I remember the Tennessee football search of 2017.
We've all been here before. It comes for us all, even Alabama. Even Nick Saban retires at a certain point in time, and we all undergo periods of transition for our favorite sports teams. But when Ben Pedigo, I think, on Twitter is how I pronounce the last name, says IU fans need something to root for these days, I guess. The answer is yes. It is their rival's downfall. So I'm actively rooting on Kentucky to go through the same kind of hell that my basketball program, Lucas's football program, has been for the better part of 2 decades. For Indiana longer than Tennessee football. Tennessee football at least looks like it's on the upswing. But yes, I'm actively laughing at Kentucky today because there's no way the Kentucky fans thought that not one coach would say no to them, but 2 coaches would say no to them.
Not officially. You know, Dan Hurley has not officially said no. He laughed it off in the presser, but things can change always when money is presented in front of head coaches.
Sure. But what did you note yesterday about the reporting around Scott Drew? Why it might not be a layup for him to join the Kentucky basketball program?
He likes his life. His wife likes their life.
His wife
kids
is introverted. That's a very, very scrutinized job. Now, I'm not saying like to the degree that she like can't be in public or something like that, but just more of a reserved, in the background lifestyle. That's not who you are at Kentucky. You're the first lady of college basketball at Kentucky.
You're the face of the state. Like, let's be honest.
Straight up. His kids, as you mentioned, are in high school. Probably don't want to be uprooted at this particular point in time. That kind of stuff matters even when the money is such that they can try and sway you. How much money does it take to remove you from a circumstance where you are generally happy in your life? And that sounds like it's Scott Drew and his family situation at Baylor. What did Dan Hurley say in response to not a question about Kentucky in the post-game press conference of the national championship game, but when asked about, Dan, you mentioned in your immediate post-game interview after winning back-to-back titles at UConn, the 6th for the program since 1999, you mentioned that UConn had given you a vast amount of resources. Well, in fact, let me just let you hear the question and answer for yourself.
Dan, I hope I don't misquote you, but you said out on the court something about UConn giving you all the resources you need. Can we interpret that to mean you intend to be back at UConn next year? You're not going to entertain any conversations with anybody else that might have a job coming open tomorrow?
Yeah. I don't think that's a concern. My wife, you should have her answer that. Yeah.
We can maybe arrange a press conference for Mrs. Hurley in the morning. Congratulations, Coach.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, she'll answer that question better than I can.
Again, and it's not end-all, be-all, but it's coming down to Dan Hurley saying, yeah, ask my wife if she wants to pick up and move her life right now. These things matter, even where the money's great. So it's not the end of the world for Kentucky. It doesn't mean that they're not going to hire a completely capable basketball coach who's going to find some level of success with them. But they have not yet, let's say, landed their top two options after at least making advances towards them, right? Both Scott Drew and Dan Hurley have been approached about the Kentucky job.
And Billy Donovan is considered one of those top three candidates.
And Billy Donovan. So what do you remember about Billy Donovan? Also, OJ Simpson died. We'll talk about it here in a second. But that, we can get to the OJ stuff here in a minute. Billy Donovan, what I remember about him at the end of his Florida tenure, after winning back-to-back titles there, the last person to do it before Dan Hurley just did it, is that he was kind of souring on recruiting at that point. Recruiting is a totally different world right now. You could argue that if done correctly and done just more transactionally, recruiting can become much easier than it was in 2006, 2007, 2005, when Billy Donovan was coaching the Florida Gators to national titles and still having to maintain a crazy schedule dealing with AAU coaches and parents and relatives and all kinds of people asking for all kind of things, and you having to do it. And I'm not accusing Billy Donovan of outright NCAA infractions, but like having to make sure that you are doing things above board while still doing the things absolutely necessary to recruit at that period of time. Now, it's literally, as the NCAA has said in their own words, the wild, wild west. I think this recruiting environment probably suits Billy Donovan a little better, where he can just outright say, all right, $500,000 for a basketball player. Sold. Let's do it.
100%.
I think that makes so much more sense at this point. And Billy Donovan could have success at Kentucky. Kentucky fans would be completely fine with that. We mostly laugh, at least Lucas and I laugh at Kentucky fans today because, again, I went to Indiana, he went to Tennessee. It's in our nature. That's what we do. But it is something that is still completely salvageable, but it does make me happy a little bit to see Scott Drew say, I'm good. I'm good.
Just to know how antsy that whole fan base is right now. Like, they're just shifting around in their seat. They're angry. They're coping.
There are going to be many Kentucky fans that remind me of this moment when Indiana and Kentucky start to play again, and I'm fearing. I'm fearing for that particular time in my life.
And how about Chip Gaines?
Yeah. Out
here battling with Kentucky fans on social media. Do you ever watch that show? With,
explain
Chip,
for the audience.
Chip and Joanna. What's the show called?
I don't know.
The show with Chip Gaines and his wife Joanna
Is it
on
it's-
HGTV.
I'm thinking of I'm thinking of something completely different. I don't know why I thought he was one of the Property Brothers. That's not right.
No, he's not a Property Brother. I've seen that show so many times. That Fixer Upper. Fixer Upper.
That's how long it took us both to Google. That's terrible. We have the entirety of the internet at our fingertips, and we're stumbling around each other trying to figure out who the hell this guy on HGTV is.
It's a very popular show. I've seen that show several times, whether it's on in the background, whether my mom loves that show. Chip and Joanna went to Baylor, for those who don't know, and Chip Gaines has been
Oh, no, he's out here
on
against
social
Kentucky
media
fans.
just battling against
Excellent.
Kentucky fans. For example, the Barstool Kentucky Twitter account tweeted something about a picture of Chip and Joanna. It said, keep these two away from Scott Drew for the next 48 hours. And somebody tweeted it saying, who the hell is this? And Chip replied, this is just one of many jabs he threw at Kentucky fans. He said, do you kiss your mom with that mouth? Ask her who I am. She will know. And he's so right.
He's so right.
He's so right.
Incredible.
He was having a ton of fun with Kentucky fans on Twitter yesterday.
Good for Chip Gaines.
Yeah.
All right. New respect for this man whose name I previously did not know. Either way, it is something that's going to be worth watching. It'll probably have a solution. I can't imagine we get to the show Monday or through the show Monday without there being a solution to Kentucky having a basketball coach. I just can't imagine that to be the case. And listen, they can conduct a nationwide search and do all the different things that they need to do, but Kentucky knows who it wants. It's just a matter of whether they can get them to say yes or not, which is hilarious to me. 615-737-1045 is the number. You also have access to the show on the F&M Bank chat via YouTube, Facebook Live, Twitter, Twitch. You can live stream the show there. We are supposed to have Kyle Tucker of The Athletic. He covers Kentucky basketball for that publication. I imagine his schedule is a bit scrambled at the moment, so I'm going to text him during the commercial break and see whether he can join us or not. Either way, we'll have stuff to talk about. Gator Mike is up next, though. Hey, Mike.
Buck, how you doing? Glad to see you talking some Florida basketball at least, and you would be correct. Yeah, Billy, like Chris Harry mentioned it the other day, that was one of the reasons he got out when he did, obviously to go to the NBA, try his luck there. But, yeah, he had tired of recruiting. And then, like you said, it's just a totally different world now with NIL, transfer portal, all that. I mean, I don't see him leaving unless he just thinks it's, wants to go back. But, not to sour anything, Buck, he did make that Final Four again in 2014, besides the back-to-back teams in 2006, 2007. So he did have one final push before he meandered off to Oklahoma City.
Thank you for the call, Mike. Brief Florida basketball history of Billy Donovan there, and I appreciate it. 615-737-1045. That's how you can jump in like Gator Mike if you want to weigh in on the conversation. OJ Simpson did pass away. I don't mean to completely shrug it off, but this did seem, it was for lack of a better term, pick your poison as far as which news item to lead the show with. So we can talk about OJ a little later. We'll see if Kyle Tucker is able to join us coming up next. Welcome back to the show. You're a troll, you know that? Shame on you. I love it. So, Scott Drew turns down the Kentucky basketball job. That, according to Matt Norlander, college basketball insider at CBS Sports. Kentucky is arguably the biggest job in college basketball, okay? And that one coach, who it sounds like Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director, might have even preferred Scott Drew because they have previous connections with one another, as I believe we discussed yesterday in the SEC observations. That might have been Mitch Barnhart, the athletic director's preference. If they end up landing Danny Hurley, they will be absolutely insufferable, and Kentucky fans will call this radio station and bury us both.
As they should. They absolutely should if that happens.
We will absolutely deserve it. And it will not make me regret a single thing that I said in the last segment, which is me just laughing at Kentucky fans because a coach turned them down. Like I said, it's not the end of the world, but it probably doesn't feel great. Candidates not name Dan Hurley or Scott Drew. Or Billy Donovan, I guess, because we've talked about Billy Donovan.
It's worth noting that Billy Donovan, he could come out and say, hey, I'm not coach of Kentucky. Dan Hurley could come out and say, I'm not going to be the coach of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Neither of them have done so.
It is credible reporting, though, from Norlander on Scott Drew. And we'll see what happens with Dan Hurley because, like you said, there's not been anything official one way or the other than him laughing off a question. Jay Wright doesn't sound like he's going to move away from television. Doesn't sound feasible right now. Nate Oates has put out a statement saying that he is going to remain at Alabama, that's where his allegiances continue to lie. We've talked about Sean Miller. I mean, they could make Bruce Pearl a Godfather offer, I suppose, though that seems a bit far-fetched. Although, I don't know that we should consider anything far-fetched when what just happened with Cal in Arkansas. Nobody had that on the board. So, beyond Sean Miller, Bruce Pearl, Rick Pitino, question mark? I am a proponent of why the hell not. I can't imagine it'd be Mitch Barnhart's first choice.
None of those names are the first one that pop into mind for me as far as where they would turn. For me, it'd be Chris Beard.
He's not had, and it doesn't mean that it can't happen, but there's been no noise to date. This has been more than, not quite a week that the Kentucky job has officially been open. But there's been no news at all since Sunday about Chris Beard and a link to Kentucky.
Nothing. No, he was linked to Arkansas early on.
Does that dissuade you at all that there's been zero noise?
No, because Chris Beard's not in their top three, nor should he be. Dan Hurley, Billy Donovan, and Scott Drew all would be better candidates at Kentucky than Chris Beard. But I'd be surprised if Chris Beard wasn't the next call up. If you're assuming Nate Oates really is out of the picture like he has insinuated to Alabama fans. The resume speaks for itself with Beard.
Okay, is there any consideration to be, and I don't want to speak out of ignorance because I genuinely don't know the question. You may know more about this than I do. Is there any kind of baggage that's followed him from Texas? Or are we clear of that? I know the was it his wife that put out a statement saying
fiance at the time, I believe.
Fiance at the time. Okay, I need to refamiliarize myself with why it is that all the details on why Chris Beard is no longer the Texas coach and ended up at Ole Miss. Because to be honest, I don't want to recklessly speculate. I don't want to attach anything to him that he may already be out of. But I'm just genuinely curious if there is some kind of baggage associated with that, because that would be, the thing that jumps into my mind. That's a huge job to drop somebody with any kind of less than reputable history, because you're immediately going to become the focal point of national scrutiny. It's not just like the Lexington, Herald Ledger or whatever it is. It's going to be at your press conferences every day. No, you're going to have ESPN, CBS, all the major networks covering your every move because you're the Kentucky basketball coach now.
I've got one for you. Joseph Bonanno just texted me this. What about Kelvin Sampson?
I'll die. I'll die. I will curl up and die. That For all of you who want to see me run out of this job, all you need is for Kelvin Sampson, currently the Houston coach, to become the next Kentucky coach. That would be the most full circle karmic moment I could have for laughing at Kentucky fans in the last segment.
Yes.
Just to get hit in the face with that.
That would be like Kentucky going down and hiring Bruce Pearl, kind of. I think that the Tennessee equivalent of that would be Kentucky swooping up Bruce, and he has big success at Kentucky. But Chris Beard feels like the natural next name, one of the natural next names in the next phase of candidates for Kentucky. I don't know if I'm betraying a confidence in this, but Belmont coach Casey Alexander texted me this yesterday. He said, don't have Buck's number, but please relay my thoughts. Upon reflection, this was right after we left Hattie B's, after announcing their title sponsorship on the show. He said, Purdue equals shut the cluck up. Hoosiers equals mild.
What is wrong with him?
I said, I think the Hoosiers are just raw chicken at this point. He said, plant-based.
Say it to me, Casey. Say it to me.
Say that to me. Say that to anybody. Say it to somebody.
He does regularly. Every time he appears on the show, he says it to me. Oh, it's terrible. So, like I said, it's not the end of the world for Kentucky. There are some candidates that do still make sense. I think Billy Donovan probably moves to the top of the list right away of people that are actually attainable. He has the Bulls on the verge of the play-in, so I guess that means something, but it has not gone well in Chicago. Like, that's been a pretty poorly run organization from top to bottom. I don't, for a long time. Not that any kind of Billy Donovan's doing, but he hasn't been able to outright correct the wrongs that have been going on there for quite some time as far as personnel and decision making. Things like that, booing the widow of Jerry Krause and things like that, all the bad vibes that have been around the Bulls organization. But this is the list that ESPN.com provides as to who are the most likely candidates. Jeff Borzello, who's one of their national college basketball writers, beyond Dan Hurley, Scott Drew, Billy Donovan, Jay Wright, and Nate Oates, who we've talked about, Tommy Lloyd, the Arizona Wildcats head coach, TJ Otzelberger, I believe is how I pronounce the Iowa State coach name. I always butcher that. As I mentioned, Sean Miller. He does have Bruce Pearl on this list. Mark Pope, because he did play for Kentucky and was, I think he won the title under Pitino, if I remember correctly, Mark Pope, who's currently at BYU. And then long shot is Rick Pitino, and it just says, why not?
You said Kentucky's the biggest job in college basketball.
Arguably.
And no, I agree with that. Biggest job, scrutiny in terms of everything that comes with that job. I agree with that. Expectations.
From both it's different. Let's take the state of Tennessee and the state of Kentucky. The state of Tennessee has professional sports. The state of Tennessee has an institution of a football program that also has a fan base that could be considered national. I think Tennessee is a big enough brand across the country, across collegiate athletics, to be considered that. In the state of Tennessee, though, it's broken up basically in three parts, where Memphis almost exclusively is focused on the Grizzlies. Nashville has the Predators and the Titans. East Tennessee could give a damn about any of it because it's all Vols all the time. In Kentucky, it's really just you.
Yeah.
It's really just you. Louisville, I feel like, it's an in-state rivalry, of course, but the only reason that Kentucky-Louisville was ever really spicy in my time is because Pitino was at Louisville.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think you're right. The biggest job in college basketball, the SEC fan football frenzy mania, is applied to basketball in Kentucky and even amplified in some ways. But is it the best job in college basketball?
I think the degree of difficulty probably makes that not true. And it's not degree of difficulty like, oh, you can't get players to go to Kentucky, or, oh, the program's in shambles. Cal's not leaving it wrecked. He hasn't done anything beyond not win enough. He's underachieved. But it's not like, and I know he said, did you pay attention to any of his comments in front of the Arkansas fans yesterday, where he's saying, I'm not going to have to do the NIL stuff myself anymore. Mm-hmm. We're going to have basically, as I said yesterday, a $5 million slush fund for him to pull from chicken tender money and Jerry Jones money and all kinds of other Arkansas money that's floating around out there.
And by the way, he has to completely rebuild that roster. I think there's one scholarship player currently on the Arkansas basketball roster.
Which he'll do right out of the gate.
Sure.
Cal, I mean, as we talked about, Kentucky's already got a ton of people in the transfer portal after the Cal news came out. And so I can't imagine that it will be too tough of a job for Cal in the initial phases. The question is, what is Kentucky's alleged struggle? Because it sounds like Cal's alleging that they don't have their NIL stuff together. Does that surprise you at all? It's almost like Ohio State. You remember when Pate came in here and said that Ryan Day was unhappy at Ohio State in no small part due to their lack of mobilization around the NIL stuff? And then very quickly, all it took was getting continuously beat by Michigan and Michigan winning a national title for that to be rectified very, very fast. So I don't know what that kick in the pants for Kentucky needs to be if they're slacking on the NIL stuff, but that should not be the case at all. And that's the first question that I'm asking, as any interviewee, any potential candidate for that job should ask Mitch Barnhart, what's our name, image, and likeness situation here?
Because Mark Stoops also has talked about that on the football side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's publicly said, if you want better players, Georgia and all these other SEC programs, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically, give us more money, we'll get you better players, is what Mark Stoops has been saying for quite some time. So I don't know the answer to that question, and that's a pretty big piece of the puzzle as to whether Kentucky is the best college basketball job right now. What else is in the argument? Because I think Danny Hurley at UConn makes that the thing that it is, just as Dawn Staley being at South Carolina makes that the thing that it is. What is in the same caliber of college basketball program right now? Because, I mean, Duke does not, it's seen better years, even though they did make a better push than I expected them to this year.
Please, everyone be quiet.
He's doing commercials now. He's got a podcast now.
Affleck.
He's having a great time. What is Affleck just out here getting all the old coaches? Coach K, Prime, Nick Saban.
Don Staley's doing stuff.
Is she?
Yeah,
Okay.
she has a commercial with Coach K for
Excellent.
Affleck.
Point being, I don't know what the best job in college basketball is, because I think Kentucky, the pressure that Kentucky comes with, you have to be up for it, and it makes things a lot harder than a lot of other places, even though you should have access to some of the best resources in the sport.
But everyone's definition is different, right? Like for the Drews, obviously, it's not a better job than Baylor for them.
Mm-hmm.
For the layman, for the neutral, that would be a layup, right? Well, of course, Kentucky basketball is a better job than Baylor. Baylor had been to one tournament before Scott Drew got there, and they are a national championship caliber program. It is incredible what they've done there. And for them, obviously, that's a better spot and a better job than Kentucky and everything that comes with Kentucky. So it's a very nebulous thing, the best job in college basketball.
Now, one of the listeners, Niraj, has tweeted us an article from the Chicago Tribune about Billy Donovan brushing off the Kentucky speculation. My total commitment and focus is here, which is, of course, what an active coach in an active season with the playoffs and play-in right around the corner is going to say. He's not going to acknowledge any kind of speculation around that job. Specifically, Billy Donovan's not going to do that. He's not going to create that kind of headache for himself. So we'll see what happens there. We had another listener at Hattie B's yesterday. By the way, it was cool to meet a lot of you guys who came up to us yesterday, guys and gals who came up yesterday at Hattie B's. It's always cool when we get to go out and do stuff. We don't very often get out of the studio.
Twice this week.
Yeah, twice. It's been a whirlwind of a week. And Lucas is very happy because there's been free food at both. But anytime we do, it's always great to see you guys. Doug was one of the people that came up to us yesterday and said that a funny topic might be, or an interesting topic might be, is Kentucky flirting with becoming the next Indiana, which of course is just so far off from where Kentucky actually is versus what Indiana's issues are. But what he was getting at was a blue blood program that didn't necessarily follow up a program legend with the best decisions afterwards. And, of course, the recruiting violations. Kelvin Sampson put them in NCAA hell on the way out the door. It was not just because Kelvin Sampson didn't just leave because of, he didn't like the pork tenderloin sandwiches in Indiana or something like that.
Too flat. So this place is too flat. I'm out.
Bloomington's actually not.
Is it not?
Bloomington, very scenic.
I just consider the entire Midwest to just be flat like a sheet of paper.
Bloomington, I don't have a lot of good things to say about my home state, but I will say that Indiana's campus in Bloomington, Indiana in particular, don't get too far outside in Monroe County because then it starts to get a little methy. But I will say that Bloomington is lovely.
And that's not messy with a lisp.
No, methy. Very house exploding on the drive up to campus, kind of methy. Be careful out there. Head on a swivel. Chuck in Clarksville is up next. 615-737-1045 if you want to jump in. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, Buck. Hey, I still think Billy Donovan's the top on the list. He's like most coaches. When he says, I haven't had any contact with Kentucky, that just means my agent is doing all the work behind the scenes. So I still think there's an opportunity there. But I'm going to give you an off-the-wall one here. How about Rick Pitino comes back to Kentucky with Richard Pitino as associate head coach, making the way for a legacy move down the road when Pitino has to be in a wheelchair and gone. So
wait, Chuck, where is Richard Pitino right now? Where is he? Is he on a staff somewhere? Do you know the answer to that question?
I think he's the head coach at a university right now.
New Mexico. He's the head coach at New Mexico.
Because I didn't remember where he landed after Minnesota.
That would be the ultimate, U of L fans walking off the ledge move. Bring Rick Pitino back with Richard Pitino as being the associate head coach.
Thank you for the call, Chuck. I don't think Kentucky fans would want that. I don't want a nepo baby type of situation.
Right. He's done a nice job in New Mexico. They made the tournament this year. They've had a couple 20-win seasons. They were a pretty popular upset pick to knock off Clemson as an 11-6 in the first round. That didn't happen. Clemson ended up in the Elite Eight. But, if Hurley and Donovan are indeed not an option for Kentucky, then I think the fan base at least starts the tailspin. And just the names are going to be coming from all over the place. Scenarios like that from Chuck, like Chris Beard, like Bruce Pearl, they're going to be grasping all over the place. And probably be a fun time to be doing Kentucky sports radio, that's for sure.
Damn it. This was our year to pass them. And now they've nuked us because Cal left for Arkansas. We had a shot at KSR. Maybe not as good a shot as we thought we did, but still, this seems unfair. Nick Ewing says of not knowing Richard Pitino was at New Mexico. He said head coach at UNM. Come on, Buck, as if everybody who's not gambling knows who the head coach at New Mexico is right now. Relax, Nick. Okay, take it easy. Speaking of people that need to take it easy, there are a ton of arrest warrants that have been issued for a Chiefs wide receiver. We'll talk about it coming up next. Masters is on television. We really appreciated our Titan/Masters analyst, Brett Kern, stopping by at Hattie B's yesterday. It was a lot of fun. Ben Jones is going to be in studio in the 11 o'clock hour. Speaking of former Titans. Hang out with Ben. I know he's been training a lot of these draft prospects. I know he knows Lloyd Cushenberry a little bit and certainly has been through a couple of coaching changes in his career. So would be interested to get his feedback on what it's like to start anew as a vet, especially with a developmental young quarterback behind you. So Ben Jones in with us at 11 o'clock today. Titans, by the way, did speak. We carried the Brian Callahan press conference for you live. I know Brian Callahan spoke at great length yesterday, so you probably got to hear the coordinators, the bulk of that on Blaine and Mickey. We'll dive into what they had to say a little later on as well. But in the meantime, there is this story out of Kansas City, well, I guess technically out of Dallas, that has just kind of continued to take a crazy turn. Rashee Rice, the Chiefs wide receiver, obviously the defending Super Bowl champions, he really has done, and listen, there's always an offseason story where we talk about a young professional athlete who's got resources, like real resources at his disposal for the first time, and he's maybe a little reckless with it or maybe really reckless with it and ends up doing himself harm financially, physically, or otherwise. And Rashee Rice is just the latest in that. But when you're racing on an expressway in Dallas, it's hard for me to be too sympathetic to your cause. He's 23 years old. He's been given 24 hours to turn himself into the Dallas police. If you've seen the dash cam video of the crash, it's horrifying. And frankly, it's a miracle that nobody got killed when he's whipping a Lamborghini SUV?
Lamborghini and a Corvette were involved.
Him and a SMU football player, Theodore Knox,
former teammate,
is who was apparently racing with him. The level of charges that they are pressing on Rashee Rice, 8 felony charges at this point.
Aggravated assault.
This has to completely, they are throwing the literal book at him, okay? I don't know what his, history of this is. I know you probably want to teach a young athlete a lesson or something like that if you're the Dallas district attorney or whomever is bringing these charges against Rashee Rice. But, we're talking about a career and 8 felony charges? That has the potential to be a career ender.
Are you talking about from a legal standpoint or from the NFL coming down on him?
I think from a legal standpoint, first and foremost, the actual thing that matters here, because the NFL will have whatever. The NFL's punishment system is not completely tied to the legal system. Those are supposed to be two separate entities, even though the NFL tried to wade into domestic violence stuff way too many times, having no real idea what they were doing. Ray Rice. But this is, maybe it gets dismissed. Maybe this is much ado about nothing. Maybe it's just blowing smoke, but it doesn't feel that way.
If it doesn't come down from the legal standpoint, which honestly, how fortunate is it, like you said, that this wasn't a Henry Ruggs type of situation, that no lives were lost? The
person that they hit was a woman with her 4-year-old in the back seat. Do you remember how terrible, as you mentioned, the Henry Ruggs thing, a girl and her dog?
It was horrific. The details were horrific.
Oh, my God.
So incredibly fortunate. And he leaves the scene on top of that.
The Ruggs thing just still makes me sick to my stomach to think about.
He leaves the scene on top of that, and they found his credit cards. They found a check. They found marijuana in the car. They found a Chiefs playbook in the car. But
he's selling secrets like what's the other McCall Hardman? The Jets are accusing.
Right. Former Chief. But if the hammer does not come down from a legal standpoint and he's able to settle or whatever would happen, I wonder what the NFL would do. in terms of hey, you dodged a major bullet on this, and the fact that nobody was critically injured or passed away. But then what would the NFL's response be? Like, how heavy of
the precedent, I would have to go back and look through precedent of it, because, I mean, I'm sure there's examples of this kind of stuff happening before, whether lives were lost or not, or whether, there was guns in the car or not, weapons, drugs, as we mentioned. There's probably all manner of precedent for the NFL to work off of that they're supposed to be able to work off of that would indicate a set punishment for him. But again, if I'm Rashee Rice, I'm not worried about the NFL. I'm worried about the legal system. The woman, Kayla Quinn, is the woman that was in the vehicle that was hit by both of the racing cars, who ended up being able to get out of the incident with both her and her son having suffered only not serious injury. But still, can you imagine the trauma of being a 4-year-old and just sandwiched by 2 speeding vehicles in one of the most the dash cam? I can't believe nobody died.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then to see him get out of the car and just start running away. Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It feels crass to make it a football conversation, but
I mean, that's what you tried to do to me with OJ today. I walked in and said, "You see OJ died?" And I was talking about OJ the murderer, and you said, maybe put some respect on his name. He's a 2,000 yard rusher.
Don't do that.
That's what you did.
That.
You're that guy. Are you proud of yourself? You're that guy.
Oh, it was a unsavory joke.
Congratulations.
And you can't trust you with anything.
I'm sorry. Didn't you just get in front of a microphone and say, "Hopefully I'm not betraying any confidences here," and then immediately betray a confidence?
Chiefs in the draft. Wide receiver, even more dire of a need.
No, you're not going to make me have a draft conversation out of this. I won't do it. Lucas, I'm putting my foot down. We are 2 weeks away from the first round of the NFL draft. I will not allow you to make 8 felony charges against Rashee Rice into a draft conversation.
I'm just saying,
I won't do it.
Receiver was a need anyway. Sure as hell is going to be even more of one if Rashee Rice is suspended for X amount of games.
Shame on you, really. Are you back there mocking wide receivers to the Chiefs? Is that what you're doing?
I've never done a mock draft.
Ever?
Not once in my life.
By the way, what happened to the Draft Network? Did that just completely cave in on itself? That was an addiction for like 4 or 5 years, where people just making mock draft after mock draft. The site seemed invented specifically just to allow people to do their own virtual mock drafts, and now it's nowhere to be found, and the only ones are Pro Football Focus that do that kind of thing anymore?
I don't know.
You're not curious at all about an entire portion of our particular industry just evaporating in smoke after putting together a very, very thorough roster of good and smart draft people in a mock draft simulator that nobody else was doing? Not curious about that at all?
It hadn't struck me.
Okay, very good. 615-737-1045 is the number. Sasquatch calling us from the woods.
Hey, what's up, Buck?
How we living?
Hey, I just want to throw this out there. I'm a Kentucky alumni, so I understand what it takes to be a Kentucky fan. And I've noticed that on the message boards that they say that Kraft's airplane, which is the biggest booster in Kentucky history, is in New York. And, these Kentucky fans are going crazy thinking that they're there trying to go to Stores, Connecticut to get Dan Hurley, which I don't see happening. Who do you think is the second-tier coaches? Do you think Rick Pitino, Bruce Pearl, somebody like that?
I mean, it's all on the table at this point if you're Kentucky, but it sounds like they're going to have to make guys like Billy Donovan and Dan Hurley outright tell them no before they even consider that second tier of coach. So, I mean, the Pitino thing seems like the longest shot, but it would be an interesting story for certain. Coming up next, former Titans center Ben Jones is going to be in studio with us. We'll talk draft. We'll talk Titans, their first day of school vibes this week. A little bit of freshman orientation going on over at St. Thomas Sports Park, so we'll get into that with Ben coming up next.
It is 11:02. Good morning from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. I'm Lucas Panzica. Breaking news this morning, first reported by CBS Sports as Kentucky's search for a men's basketball coach continues. Matt Norlander reporting Baylor head coach Scott Drew will remain in Waco, and the Wildcats continue to look for the replacement of John Calipari. Titans head coach Brian Callahan, offensive coordinator Nick Holtz, and defensive coordinator Denard Wilson met with the media yesterday to kick off the offseason program, and Callahan was asked if the moves the team made in free agency helps them be more open-minded with the 7th overall pick in the draft.
I do. I feel really good about where we're at. I feel like there's going to be opportunities to draft some good players. You don't control what happens in front of you, and so as these picks go off, it allows you to be a little more flexible in your approach, and whatever that pick may be, we can find that best player for us in the process. So I do feel like the free agency has opened our ability to be more open-minded in the draft.
Also this morning, the family of OJ Simpson made a statement on his social media accounts announcing the news of his death from his battle with cancer at the age of 76. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
It's always good when we can hang out with our friends in studio, though Ben Jones is probably still kind of pissed at me for not inviting him to Hattie B's, letting the punter come out instead. Hey, bud.
Never been to Hattie B's before, Brett? Come on.
Never. Well, his excuse was that they like to go do things as a family, and that Hattie B's is such a popular spot that when you've got a bunch of hangry kids, that the line at Hattie B's may not always be your friend from time to time.
I get that. I definitely choose different restaurants when the kids are around. Like, it's hot. Like, the kids ain't going to eat hot chicken.
The only two children that I have to worry about when it relates to dining is Lucas and Robert. They took me to a Red Lobster on Monday for the Eclipse Summit. When's the last time you've eaten at a Red Lobster?
We used to tear it up in college. The amount of biscuits you could eat in college at Red Lobster.
Cheddar Bay biscuits at Red Lobster in Athens?
Oh, yeah. That's all we ate. We'd get salad and just eat a million, because you don't got to pay one time. It's a $5 meal.
Just a mountain of biscuits next to a small side salad. I love that. Ben Jones hanging out in studio here with us. Always appreciate Ben and his insights, and he's got a lot of them because you've been doing a lot of work with these draft prospects coming up.
Yeah, I've done some pre-draft stuff with Graham Barton, Cedric from Georgia, the center, Ben Prawn. So I've talked to a lot of guys, like helping them through the process, the mental side of it. So that's the key is, like, you never know what to expect as a kid coming out of college. You don't know how to sit in a room with the GMs, the head coaches, all these scouts. How do you come in and present yourself? Like, should I put on a certain image or something? Like, if you're an old lineman, be yourself. Like, they want to know if you're going to fit in the room with the rest of the guys. Can we have 5 guys working together? I was like, they want to know that. They want to see the normal side of you. They don't want some copy and paste, like, speech you made out for them. They want to know, like, hey, can this guy relate to the other guys in our room? I was like, for other positions, yeah, quarterback, you got to act a certain way because you're the leader of the team. You're the spokesperson. Yes, you want your quarterback to act a little differently.
How different is that for you, having been through that, on the other side, and now kind of helping these kids, for lack of a better term, prepare for the most important job interviews of their lives, what they've been working for their entire athletic careers at this point? What's it been like? Has it been fun? Have you seen and noticed a difference generationally from when you went through the process versus the guys you're talking to now? What's it been like?
The two guys I really spent a lot of time with, great guys. And I was like, all right, if I'm going to put my name on somebody, I want to be able to reach out to teams. When teams call about them, I want to say, like, hey, this kid is a great kid. Like, you're getting a good guy. And that was the most important thing to me. I wasn't going to put my name and back somebody that I didn't truly believe in, like how he prepared, how smart he is. the effort, their toughness. So I was very picky. I'm like, hey, I'm not working with this guy. I really want to put my hand on this guy. Like Graham's, he went to Ravenwood High School. So I've known him since he's been in high school, helped him through the process at Duke. Like, hey, he was going through some injuries. Do I do it now? Do I wait? I was like, hey, man, this is about you at this point. Like, you got to take care of yourself. I've done that road, and I've been beat to death. I'm like, at some point, I wish somebody would have been like, hey, let's be smart here. Let's take care of yourself, and so you can have this career.
Now, Ben, I feel like a lot of people at various points in your life told you, hey, Ben, maybe not this time when what was it? Your clavicle was sticking in the back of your throat or something like that?
Yeah, that was one of them.
This man came in here with a straight face and tried to act like people didn't back him off from time to time.
Just a
Ben, you're an
scratch.
insane person.
Yeah, that's when you play a game and you have so much respect for the other guys. My biggest fear was letting somebody down, and that was my downfall at some point. I'm like, I would practice when I was hurt. I just didn't want to hey, if the quarterback needs me out there or the other guys need me there to make all the calls, I didn't want to let anybody else down.
Sure.
No matter if I was hurting myself, I was out there for the team.
So let's talk about Graham Barton because locals will know him well from the high school football circuit, obviously, as you mentioned. Ravenwood had been at Duke for the past couple of years. The positional versatility that he seems like he's going to have at the next level, Ben, I don't know that that's ever been more important in today's NFL.
That's what when teams call or ask him, like, hey, where do you see him as? I'm like, this guy is a stud. Like, to start as a freshman at center, then those last 2 years or 3 years, he was playing left tackle. That just shows you how athletic he is, how talented he is, because they're playing against a great guy. But, yeah, like, I think coming into the league, I think he can start right away at guard. But also, you give a guy that smart, that athletic, he can come in and play center for you and be a Pro Bowl kind of center for you in 2 or 3 years. And he's a guy who's, if you're in an emergency for tackle, he's done it.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, you got to guard him like maybe he can play tackle. This guy's done it at a high level in college, so those guys don't come around often, and he's gonna reap the benefits.
It's and it's not a bad career move to make to move to the inside. You used to be the top paid players, and it's still a different kind of premium for a tackle versus an inside guy. But Ben, I mean, I know you're seeing what the marketplace looked like this offseason, not just for your boy Lloyd Cushenberry, who signed down the road here at St. Thomas Sports Park, but the way that the league has emphasized interior pressure from defensive linemen, the counter to that has been, okay, well, then we need premier guys who can be able to handle that kind of action when it gets there faster, like it does when you're playing on the inside. And those have become $20+ million players. I think that is going to, at least from my standpoint, and I don't know what your experience has been like, but where the best athletes have gone to the defensive side of the ball because it has been more profitable and a little sexier to be an edge guy or the guy that gets sacks, forces fumbles, as opposed to trying to pass block and stuff like that. I do think that pay bump, every level of football is going to notice that you can get paid almost as much to play guard as you can tackle in the league at this point.
Yeah, right now the money is definitely – you have your edge guys on the defense, but your interior nose guards, your D tackles, it's not a lot of them that's getting the quality – or the big deals like your guards, your centers, your tackles. I think it's easier now to get paid as an offensive lineman than your interior run stopper because nobody stops the run anymore. It's all about rushing, so they're using smaller guys on the inside, guys who can do okay in the run, but they're there to rush the passer and affect these $50 million quarterbacks.
Ben Jones hanging out in studio with us. We got the golf on the television as well. We'll get Masters picks from Ben at some point.
Love it.
I'm sure. Are you? Have you been locked on? Do you watch the practice rounds too?
No, that's too much into it. Like you just gotta go with your gut. Like some guys are good under pressure, and when the stages are big, you got to go with those guys.
Yeah, but you probably know that golf course as well as the people playing it based on the experience that you were telling Lucas and I that you've had there.
I've walked it many a times, but to step on there with that kind of pressure, with just looking down 18, I'm like, I would kill somebody if I ever had to hit a ball. It's literally a little gap, like looks like 10 yards, and you had to hit it 300 yards, or you're going to kill somebody. That pressure right there, I'm like, no chance.
Scenario. You're Scotty Scheffler. It's the 9th hole on Sunday. You've got a 3-stroke lead, and you get the call. Your wife's in labor. What do you do?
Is it your first kid or second?
Does he already have a kid?
That's an experienced parent right there. We were talking about this, was it with Kern yesterday?
Yep.
Because I remember them not telling Van Jefferson that his wife went into labor during the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Ben, and I don't know, I'm sure it's specific to the individual, but if you're in the middle of playing the Masters, you're somebody who's won the Masters before, as you said, I don't know if it's his first kid or second. Are you looking that up,
Yeah,
Lucas?
I don't believe I believe it would be his first.
Ooh.
Yeah, Scheffler's a young guy. Scheffler's only 27.
If it's his son, he'll be like, he'll understand. It might take him a little while, but if it was his little girl, I'm going if it's a little girl. But if it's a boy, I'm like, hey, son, I was putting some food on the table, and we can talk about this later.
This is going to mean something to you one day.
No doubt.
Not yet, but today it means something. That's great. Ben Jones hanging out with us in studio. We'll talk some more offensive line. The Titans officially back in the building this week. I'm sure Ben is happy to not be practicing and working out on April the 8th. We'll get his perspective on the Titans coming up next. All right, so Ben Jones is DJing this hour because he's in studio with us. Who are we listening to, Benny?
Ray Fulcher, C in Tennessee.
C in Tennessee, Ray Fulcher. So this is a songwriter that a lot of the folks across the street at BMI and Music Row will know really, really well. Big time songwriter for Luke Combs, as you mentioned. Are you primarily country music? Is that your vibe?
Country and Christian. That's all you're getting from me.
Country and Christian. So what is there a specific time of day that you're listening to gospel music or Christian music versus country music, or just depend on what playlist you throw on?
So on the way to school with the kiddos, they pick.
Okay.
But I monitor what they pick. It's like Lauren Daigle for my daughter, every song by a Christian song. My son, he is a wild card. It could be he gets on a kick and like, you like that one? I think he's trying to pick songs that I would like.
Oh, yeah?
So he's like,
that's cool.
So he'll pick some country songs some days. Then he went on a streak of Christian songs because he really thought I liked it. So he was just pumped up like, I'm picking Daddy's song today. So
that's
I love
cool.
it. I let them have their thing in the mornings. But if I'm in the truck midday, I'm listening to you. In the evenings, it's going to be probably 100% country.
What are you doing in the middle of the day listening to this?
You don't have to lie.
Hey, no, honest to God.
I text him pretty much all the time.
Ben and Brett, like, they listen to the show a lot.
We do.
Because anytime, and, unfortunately for us, Lucas, it's not just them. Like, a lot of people who you wouldn't think listen to the radio show very much know what we talk about on a day-to-day basis. This is actually a pretty public thing that you and I do for a living.
People say dance like no one's watching. We do a radio show like no one's listening, which probably isn't the way you should do a radio show.
It's a terrible idea.
Hey, that's why people listen.
So, speaking of people listening to the words that we're saying on a regular basis, the Titans are back in the building, and on April the 8th, that sounds like a nightmare. Ben, how many times did you have was it just Vrabel for you where you had a new coach and had to, like, report super early like this?
It started out for my career was every 2 years. So when I was in Houston, it was Kubiak for 2, then O'Brien for 2. Then I got here, it was Malarkey for 2, then Vrabel. So Vrabel was my longest stint with not having a new coach. But it was like OC new every other year. Yeah. So that was always something.
Well, when you're a vet on a team like that, and as you said, you did this at every phase of your career. So I guess how much did that experience change for you, given where you were at varying points in your career, the teammates that you knew you were going to have around you, your quarterback situation in particular, because obviously that's something that a lot of Titans fans are paying attention to right now. What is kind of the process for you as a vet, welcoming in so many new different parts and pieces, as well as a new coaching staff?
Later in my career, it was about building relationships, getting the guys like, hey, they knew I knew the offense. I made the calls for them. I was meeting early and later with them to get them comfortable with the system. Then it was a time of, hey, I got to build this relationship so this guy trusts me on the field. Like in the net, when it's down and dirty and you got to trust somebody, I wanted him to look for me every time. Like, all right, Ben's never going to steer me wrong. Like, hey, he knows what he's doing. So I was making sure, like, in the offseason, I did not have to be in there. But literally from January, I was there every single day. Like, I would come in, I'd have my cup of coffee with a different coach. I'd get a workout in there with Frank. Then I would stop by them like, hey, what are y'all putting in today? And they would tell me what they were installing. So I'd go watch it and watch cut-ups on my own because I enjoyed doing that side of football. It wasn't always just going out there and beat your head against the wall. I really enjoyed the X's and O's also.
But what about when you're new to the offense and you're coming in and a quarterback is going into a second year, which is the exact situation you had with Marcus, and that's the situation Lloyd Cushenberry has here with Will Levis. Like, what type of conversations do they need to be having during this period in the offseason program?
Yeah, I was sitting by Marcus in every meeting, so to make sure we were seeing it through the same set of eyes, like, hey, if I'm doing this, like by the time we got to camp, we were pretty comfortable together. We went to dinner a couple times a week. We golfed 3 or 4 days a week. So he trusted me on that side of it, but just having the relationship, like, hey, Ben's going to get me out of these bad plays if it's the run. Like, hey, Marcus was dialed into the pass game to protection, so I would give him that side of it. And if I saw a red flag, you'd see me just reach back there and wave my hand. He'd be like, what do you see? So he'd come up there and change it. But that's how I knew what I wanted to take off of his plate so he could really – because he was young. Like, he really needed to focus on the concepts of the passers, getting the receivers in the right spot. So I kind of took care of everything else for him.
Did you see the picture of his Zoom introduction in Washington?
No.
Ben, he looks so old. He
was gray when he was here.
I know he was starting to get the grays.
Y'all stressed him out. That's y'all's fault. Leave him alone. Such a good human.
That's not my fault.
That is y'all's fault.
You did this.
Y'all did this to Marcus.
In 19, it really felt like he was going gray very, very fast, for sure. And I don't mean to make light of that, because obviously that was a tough situation for him and a particularly difficult point for you guys to kind of work through collectively as a team. But he is almost entirely gray now. He has aged almost as fast as Vrabel did as a coach. Like, Mike looks so much older than when he the last time I saw him, not the TMZ shots of him gambling in Vegas, but the last time I saw him at the combine, from some early pictures of him getting hired in 19 or 18, it looks like two totally different people. It's hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's a big stress coming with a quarterback. You're the leader. Everybody's looking at you. A lot of times, I can walk around this town, not a soul knows who I am, which is great. Like, everybody knew who he was, so he had to keep a certain image at all time. He was always in go mode. And yes, he wasn't having some years it was not as good. He was hurt. He was doing this. So the extra stress, the extra time, like, because he was trying to get that next contract. He would have done anything, but his body wasn't holding up. It was just not working for him. And that's just a lot of stress that you're trying to provide for your family. But unreal guy.
No, and without question, there was never any dispute about the kind of person that Marcus was. And unfortunate for him that his career didn't pan out quite the way here that he wanted it to, though he continues to have an NFL career.
Yep.
I think it's a good point that you make, Ben, about like your process working with him in particular, and just kind of what it speaks to about different personality types that you're going to deal with at the quarterback position, and not just at the quarterback. Because like we've talked about this before, Derrick Henry is – you got to earn that trust for sure. And there are a lot of dudes like that. You don't know all the different backgrounds that these guys come with. And that's a really football locker rooms just by volume for how many different people are in the locker room at one given time. They all have to be collectively working towards the same goal, though they may think completely different about everything in life from one another. It's one of the more unique kind of, all right, everybody put everything aside as we work towards this common goal.
Yeah.
How did you that's probably something that's innate to your personality, but how did you kind of feel that out for yourself? Because that's not something that just comes easily to everybody, and I feel like that's pretty essential for a center to be able to do.
Right. So my thing was I tried to eat breakfast and lunch with different people every day. I didn't just have my little clique that I always walked in the same time, ate breakfast. I would take time. My wife would be like, what are you doing up there all day? At the offseason, I was like, hey, I'm going to grab lunch with this guy today. Hey, I'm bringing this guy hey, you want to lift today so I can sit down to learn a little bit more about his family. So I was literally trying to – when anything would go wrong, like guy had car trouble, guy needed to find a house or apartment or anything, they would like, hey, I need to find a house, or hey, I have family coming to town. Can you send me a restaurant? I would have a whole book that I would be like, hey, send this to your family. Hey, this is a good spot for them to stay.
You were Nashville Guru before Nashville Guru.
No doubt. Like people would, like Chick, our player personnel, he'd be like, just go ask Ben. Like he knows the real estate market. He knows the places to eat. He knows where you need to put your family. So I'd kind of get me in the front door with a lot of people. But because you want guys on that team to trust you and come to you. And I would sit down and have financial talks with guys in the hot tub in the morning because they knew I was always there. And I was always like rookie symposium, rookie meeting. I would come in, I'm like, all right, this is how I do my schedule. This is how I do my finances, to kind of open up the book so they could come and feel comfortable talking to me.
So now that is the task that Lloyd Cushenberry is going to have to undertake, and I know you know him a little bit. What kind of player are the Titans getting in Lloyd?
I remember last year when Vrabel and Stretch was like, hey, can you look at some of these players for me? We're going to evaluate some centers. And they sent me like 10 guys to watch. And I said, I don't even have to watch these guys. I know who the best one is in this market. He was like, who? I was like, it's one guy. It's night and day better than the other guys they sent me to. I was like, it's Cushenberry. And they're like, that easy? I'm like, yes, I can watch. I'll watch them all for you. But when I was breaking down tape through my time, he was always a guy. I'm like, hey, I'm going to watch him this week. Because I know he's a strong guy. He's tough. He's going to be out there. And he was a guy I was like, all right, I have that. So I'd always, if we played him, I'd go there and say hey to him. But certain guys correlate better. So like some games, I would not watch a guy. I'm not watching him. He's going to give me, I'm going to sit there and think I can't block a guy all week because this center for this team couldn't touch him. So I'm like, I want to have good vibes going into the game. I want to know this guy is blockable that I'm playing. So I'm like, all right, I knew he was a guy I could always turn on. I'm like, hey, he's going to go out there and block the guy.
So you mentioned stretch there. John Streicher, who was so much more than Vrabel's right-hand guy. I know he had a more specific title than that. But he's now with the Los Angeles Rams. Yep. And I wonder what you can tight because, understandably, Mike keeps a lot of things close to the vest.
Yep.
And I'm not asking you to divulge any state secrets here, but I don't think there's a way for me to properly articulate how important stretch was to the operation of everything for you guys. What is he going to bring to Sean McVay and the Rams?
I would say the biggest thing, he watches every single game, every single week. So any clip that shows up in a game, like you can talk through the scenario, like say, hey, this is what they're calling on pass interference. So he'll have every pass interference clip pulled up. Hey, this is the call they're calling on defense this week. Hey, this is illegal touching. So he'll show every reference for you. So we'd have a Friday meeting with Vrabel, and he would go over, hey, these are hot topics in the league. This is what's getting called in the game. This is what guys are getting away with. If we're not just going to be a good team, we're going to be a great team. We're going to follow the rules and take advantage of the rules. So he would have a whole tape every week of that, and literally Stretch would do all of the tape and send it to Vrabel. He'd be like, Vrabel didn't get through half of it today. So I'd go in there and sit there because every time you walk in there, he'd be clipping on clips. I'm like, what are you watching, Stretch? He's like, then I'd get to watching clips. I'm like, hey, that's a good Friday clip.
Yeah.
It was a Thursday night game. We were eating O-line dinner, and we'd all text him like, hey, that better be on there tomorrow. So he does so much for that. And he made us better as a team because we learned the whole game of football, not just how to be an offensive lineman.
What do you make of what they could look like now? This is as big a philosophical shift as I think they've experienced. There have been a lot of generations of this particular franchise going back to the Oilers, but in 25 years of them being the Tennessee Titans, I don't know that there's going to be a bigger change from what one team has looked like to what one team the next year expects to look like. And I wonder what you make of the personnel decisions that they've chosen through the free agencies thus far.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me when I came in, they brought in me, they drafted Jack Conklin, they drafted Derek, they brought in DeMarco. It was kind of a culture switch. They were trying to switch it, and that's what they're kind of doing here. They're bringing in a Cushenberry. They wanted a solid center right there. They went and got a receiver in the market. They went and got 2 corners in the market who are elite. So you can see it happen, and what their brand is, hey, they're going to have some guys who can throw the deep ball to. Now their focus is, hey, we got to make sure we can protect our quarterback, because when you're in this point in the year and you have the money, this is your chance to win now, because you're not paying a quarterback. Quarterback takes up so much space in your cap. This is your time to go get some talent and try to win it and get weapons around him and protect him. They
gave press conferences yesterday. They were asked a lot of questions, and one topic in particular that came up is Treylon Burks.
Yep.
It's so hard for any rookie coming into the NFL, Ben, and it's especially hard when your body is the thing that keeps letting you down, because that's been the bulk of the issue with Treylon. He just cannot for the life of him stay available, unfortunately. How do you view him at this point? Because he's heading into year 3. This stuff goes really fast, and they're going to have to make a pretty critical decision on him in the very, very near future.
Yeah, it was similar to Corey Davis. Like, he had some injury issues early on. He'd have a couple big games, but they didn't pick up his option, and he had that huge year. And they're like, man, we probably wish we'd had that 5th year
I remember
option.
Corey being pissed about them not picking up the option.
And that's the thing. Very, very similar. Quiet, reserved guys who good teammates, but he's got the injury bug, and that happens, and I want him to do well. He's such a good kid, and I think his thing is just being able to stay on the field. If you're on the field, you get more targets. More targets you get more opportunities, and it comes with a confidence. So if he's out there, stays healthy for a year, I think he's a good player.
That has to be such a hard thing to come to terms with, though, like that idea of it's just this is what this sport is going to do to you sometimes. Because, the quarterback hit rate, we're getting ready to have the draft here in 2 weeks from today, as a matter of fact. And, like, the quarterback hit rate for the position that we should all know the most about, the position that we spend the most damn time talking about, watching, emphasizing everything about, it's about a 40% hit rate coming out of the draft. And that's at, like, the very top of these guys. For football players, it has to be just such a compartmentalization of accepting that to an extent, because that, I don't know, it would just be hard for me to get my head around the idea of this sport is going to do this to you more often than not, and how you figure out how to overcome it, if you're able to overcome it, this is just the percentage chance you have to make it or not.
Yeah, it's hard. Especially when you come in, you're replacing an A.J. Brown, all the pressure's on you, trying to have that. So I'm hoping having Hop, having Ridley here, takes a little pressure off of him, takes a couple reps off of him, and he's able to flourish. Like, it's not easy. This league is not easy, especially when you can't get in a rhythm because you're hurt. Then that's always in the back of your head, like, hey, I got to be out there. Oh, I'm doing this. Oh, I can't get hurt again. That's part of the mental game. So I understand that, and I hope it takes off for him because I think he has the talent in his bones.
There's no question. Ben Jones hanging out here with us in studio. Are you job hunting right now? What's your deal?
Just, you know what I am. 3 days a week, I'm over there working out at Fit Lab with Josh and the other linemen that are in the league. So I was in there with Stinny, Shaq Mason, Brewer, Schools.
Where'd Stinny just sign?
Giants.
That's right.
So he's back up there with half of the Titans coaches, I feel like. So he's back with them. So, but yeah, that's what they give me a hard time because I'm like 10 years older than those other guys. And I'm in there working out with them. And they're like, why are you doing this? I'm like, for me, it's the mental thing that I can do it. And it's competitive. I like that side of the football. I want to be competitive. And I can't be competitive in golf with Suckup and Kern. So this is my way to go in there and I can compete and actually win in something.
It's disgusting how good they both are at golf.
Oh, it's unreal.
Georgia spring game happening this Saturday. Are you going? And what's been the conversation in Athens throughout spring this week? Tennessee, it's obviously been about Nico, and it's his team now, and a lot happening around him, but I'm curious what that discussion is in Georgia.
The Dogs are going to be good. What do you think? We got our quarterback back? Pretty much our whole line.
You can't ask him a question that expects serious analysis about the Georgia Bulldogs. He's just going to go on glowing about them.
What's not to like? Like, you got literally the top pick in the draft, they're saying right now, Carson Beck, who was our question mark last year. So you give him a whole year of confidence. You still got weapons. Yes, we lost probably the best player in the draft, Brock Bowers, but hey, we're Georgia. We're going to whoop Tennessee. I'm sorry, Tennessee fans. We're going to whoop y'all again. That's how it is.
Who do you consider, now with Nick Saban out of the picture, the biggest threat to Georgia at this point in the SEC, where if it's not for Saban, I'd be willing to bet you guys have 4 or 5 national titles under Kirby by now instead of the 2. Who now becomes that threat? Is it Sark and Texas coming into the league? Like, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, you're going down there. You're seeing the program they have, and now NIL is coming in a big factor. What school can actually pay these players and keep them there? Like, Georgia has a great NIL. Ole Miss has definitely got one. Ohio State's got some money. So which program's sustainable? Which coach is not going to leave that's young enough? And so I'm saying this year we have to go 2 Texas, 2 Ole Miss, and 2 Alabama. So I'm saying we just got to win 2 of them. But I would say Texas scares me the most, honestly.
I think that's the right answer. Don't you agree? We talk a lot about Tennessee and the upward trajectory, and we'll see how things look under Nico. But Texas is ready to go right now. With
another
the
number one
quarterback,
another number 1 pick candidate over there in Quinn Ewers.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, gut feeling, Masters pick, go. You
Gut
just said it was
feeling?
all about the gut feeling.
Scotty.
Yeah.
If it's not Scotty, you got to go Koepka. Gotta go.
Just because he doesn't give a damn out there.
No doubt. Like, that's half of it. It's mental. Like, golf, standing over a putt and having that crowd, he doesn't care.
Machine.
And that's what I love. Like, yes, he is a prick. Yes, he says some stuff, but he wins.
Yeah.
You want a winner. I'm like, when you're doing a pool and you don't put him in it, you're like, should have done it. Should have picked him.
What are you going to shoot tomorrow?
25 miles per hour winds. I'm out there for a good time. Me and Castle are going to go out there in the morning. QB Center Exchange. We're going to
Matt Castle. I haven't
eat some
seen
breakfast.
Matt Castle in so long.
Eat some breakfast and try to not lose all our balls. That's our round, and get some steps in and get a lot of jokes in. And I feel for whoever plays with us tomorrow.
Ben, it's always good to see you, buddy. Too long between visits. We'll have to bother you again sometime soon. Thanks for doing it.
Absolutely. Anytime, guys.
That's Ben Jones hanging out with us. Some Vols transfer portal news coming up next. The praise is pouring in, as it should, for Ben Jones hanging out with us. A lot of you guys are demanding that Ben and Brett be a part of the show regularly. I always hesitate to ask our friends to do stuff on a regular basis without paying them. So perhaps I could get Lucas to give up some extra money to pay Ben Jones and Brett Kern. Could we do that?
I can see what I got lying around in my book bag here. I've got 3 cough drops, half a roll of Scotch tape, and a highlighter that has maybe 5% of actual highlighter left in it.
When is the
last? Spread it out like a cough drop a week.
Cough drop a week.
Maybe dig up a quarter.
I think I have a couple of cough drops in my bag. Perhaps we could stretch it. We could probably get a full football season out of cough drops, if that was indeed the case. But, we'll get them involved as regularly as they want to be involved, basically, is how I approach that. Because, I do hate to ask people for too much of their time on a regular basis without, making sure that they're compensated. And perhaps we can explore that if there's an advertiser out there, honest to God, that wants us to put Ben Jones or Brett Kern on the radio show on a weekly basis. All you got to do is call. That's real easy. That's something we can I'm not out here glad handing, but if there's a business owner who likes Ben Jones and Brett Kern and would be interested in trying to see if they would be interested in doing a weekly appearance presented by their respective company, then yeah, we'd be happy to explore that possibility. But I don't want to ask them to do it for free. So, while we're talking about money moves, Jonas Aidoo is in the portal. This is breaking news courtesy of, I've got it from On3. Did On3 break the news first? I have it from Joe Tipton.
Always on 3 with the portal news.
Okay, so he's declared for the 2024 NBA draft while also entering the transfer portal. So he's pulled a Bronny James here. It allows him to keep his options open. This is something that they are allowed to do. They can declare for the draft and still be able to pull their name out of the draft process until such time as they hire an agent. He averaged 11.4 and 7.3 for Tennessee last year. He was a big part of the reason that Tennessee made it as far as they did, not just winning the SEC, but advancing to the Elite Eight. Solid as a rim protector. A significant loss one way or the other for the University of Tennessee.
It is a shame that the season ended the way it did for Jonas Aidoo. He obviously did not play well in the tournament. Played well against St. Peter's in the first round, but struggled against Texas and struggled mightily against Purdue. Just couldn't find his shot, couldn't deal with Zach Edey, and ended up on the bench for pretty much the entirety of that second half. And it's a shame because he was a huge part of Tennessee's success last season. He put together some really consistent stretches as a rim protector, like you were saying. Just funneling the offense through him worked really well for Tennessee at times. It's a total rebuild on the front court. Toby Awaka gone, Jonas Aidoo gone, and you return basically JP Estrella as far as guys that have any modicum of experience. And Estrella helped out against Purdue. But there are big men in the transfer portal, and Tennessee is undoubtedly going to have to address it that way and find somebody that can come in and be that presence that Aidoo just was not in the NCAA tournament.
Speaking of Tennessee and basketball, it's my understanding that you're going to have the new Lady Vols coach on tomorrow.
Yeah, Kim Caldwell is going to join the show tomorrow at 10:20. You will be on South Beach. I will be in studio. And, looking forward to getting to know Coach Caldwell a little bit.
Okay, so you can hear Coach Caldwell with Lucas tomorrow while I am out on vacation. Lucas has you covered tomorrow and on Monday as well. And then I'll be back from South Beach.
I wonder if Tobe Awaka, had he known Aidoo was hitting the portal, also would have hit the portal. But you never know what the circumstances are with these guys. If they want to go closer to home, if it's a playing time thing, NIL, absolutely no idea what the factors are. But Rick Barnes already has work to do, where now, we talked about it after Awaka hit the portal, said, okay, Tennessee now has a roster to be built around, essentially, Zakai Ziegler, Jemai Meshack, and Jonas Aidoo in terms of proven commodities. Cam Carr can come in and help, and he flashed. But in terms of proven guys, now that becomes Jemai Meshack and Zakai Ziegler. And you got a lot of holes to fill around those guys.
When do you want to talk about OJ?
OJ died.
Yes, Lucas, that is correct. OJ Simpson did die. So, former NFL star, accused of murdering 2 people, including his ex-wife. He's dead at 76. That news broke this morning, basically on my drive in. I wasn't aware that he had cancer. Obviously, he's been out of prison for some time now. He's been very active on social media, signing off on a regular basis, not as OJ Simpson on social media, but from yours truly with all of his tweets. He's one of the most high-profile legal cases of in society I can think of. I don't want to say in American history. That sounds a little over the top, but he's certainly one of the most high-profile cultural moments that people can pinpoint. No matter what generation you're from, he is infamous more than famous. And I said this to Lucas, and Kenny Smoove was from 92Q was in back there with us, and Bert as well, talking about it this morning. He's somebody who, depending on what age you are, you probably think of O.J. Simpson as famous for different things. Now, the overarching thing recently, of course, has been the murder, has been reliving the trials via the phenomenal ESPN 6-part Oscar-winning documentary series that they put out on the case of OJ. But Lucas, at least for me, and this is probably just a millennial thing, OJ Simpson is one of those people who I recognize as famous for being a murderer until somebody told me while learning that OJ Simpson was famous for murder, oh no, he was famous before that for being a football player. This is just OJ part 2.
It was always kind of the package for me. I don't know. I always
never separated those things?
No, I never grew up like OJ, the guy who got away with murder, and then, the famous former Heisman Trophy winner. It was kind of always all in one for me. Like, I grew up watching the Naked Gun movies, right? My dad loved those movies. You've seen the Naked Gun.
Not a one.
Oh, my God. Some of the funniest movies ever made. OJ was in those movies. OJ was very funny in those movies, and that was kind of at the peak of his celebrity post-football. So it was always a package deal for me with OJ. Have you seen the 30 for 30 docuseries?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing.
It's my favorite 30 for 30. Like we talked about this the other day. You said your favorite was the 2 Escobars. For just the breadth and width and detail of the reporting on that, the O.J. Simpson 30 for 30 is the best thing that they've ever done. It literally won an Oscar. It's phenomenal. I wonder if most people are like you, that they package that whole thing together. Because I bet there's a certain generation that thinks of him as football star or as movie star part 1, and then everything that happened in the early 1990s. Were you even born when he murdered his ex-wife?
It happened when, 95?
I think the murder was in 94, and then the trial drug out into 95.
And the Bronco, that was in 95. That stuff with the Bronco was happening, I believe, summer of 95. I was born October 95.
Okay. So you're pre-OJ. I mean, he did football commentary for a while, as one of the YouTube commenters pointed out for NBC.
I read Al Michaels' book a few years back, and Al Michaels and OJ were very close.
Oh, really?
Very close.
During their time at NBC.
Yes. And Al's parts about that book, about finding out about the OJ case and the trial, fascinating stuff.
Well, and just the racial implications of it all. I mean, I know some people look back at the way that they may have celebrated OJ being acquitted as some kind of victory, and I'm sure a good many of those people probably look back on that with some tinge of regret, but that was such a polarizing time, certainly in our country's history, and to kind of relive that through the history of the 30 for 30, and as Lucas said, Al Michaels' book, and OJ's just such a, I don't know, it's a very complicated figure, but the one thing that is it's a very, very common abuser a trait is that it was never OJ's fault. No matter what it was never OJ's fault. 615-737-1045 is the number. If you want to jump in, we'd be happy to have you. We will talk more about what the Titans coaching staff had to say. Treylon Burks, it's time for him to earn his keep. And the argument for Malik Neighbors as the top wide receiver prospect in the draft coming up. I'm Buck Rising. It's 104.5 The Zone.
It is 12:03. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone studios. The Masters a bit delayed today due to weather sweeping through Augusta, but 5 different players are tied at 3 under early on to the top of the leaderboard in the first round. They include Bryson DeChambeau. Kentucky basketball search for a men's head basketball coach to replace John Calipari continues. As CBS Sports reported this morning, Baylor head coach Scott Drew will remain in Waco. Also this morning, the family of OJ Simpson announced the news of his death on social media due to cancer at the age of 76. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
I love this Thursday show. I always love when we get to be in here live watching the Masters. I love it because college basketball has just wrapped up. It means that football is really right around the corner and, in fact, ongoing right now, and that the NHL playoffs are almost here as well. Fun time in the sports calendar. We're happy to have you guys along with us for the final hour. That's Lucas Panzica and myself. Got some phone calls to get to, and we will do so momentarily. 615-737-1045 if you would like to join the discussion. Titans coaches did speak yesterday, their only media availability of the week. Worth noting that workouts are what's going on right now. The workout time is limited. The meeting room time is limited. The time they can physically be in contact with the coaches is limited because it's very, very early on in the offseason program. And that's just the way that the NFL has it structured. But good attendance. Seemed like all the primary components that need to be here are here. Seems like all the pieces on this roster that have something to prove to a new coaching staff were in attendance as well. One of those pieces is, of course, Treylon Burks. Would you describe him as polarizing among Titans fans? I don't know that I would use that word. I think most people are apathetic about Treylon Burks, which is not polarizing. I think most people are at a similar place that I am, which is until he does something meaningful, until he gives us a reason to trust him, to count on him, to rely upon him, he should not really be considered a part of the equation, even though he does occupy a roster spot as a former first-round pick.
Polarizing insinuates that there are strong opinions on him, that everybody has a strong opinion about him one way or another, and I think most people are in the boat of just not a factor until he is within this offense.
And so there's no secret about it. Treylon Burks, heading into year 3, has as much as any player on this roster to prove as to why they, 1, should still be here moving forward, 2, if they're not going to be here moving forward, would have a place on another team. That first-round pedigree tends to buy you a lot of goodwill, a lot of opportunities. Eric Armstead, honestly, is a good example of this, getting another payday and to go to Jacksonville, because it's just somebody who was Trent Baalke. Did Trent Baalke draft Eric Armstead in San Francisco? I think Baalke might have already been gone by then. But even still, former first-round draft picks get a lot longer runway on this stuff than basically any player picked on day 2 or day 3. And so I'm sure if Treylon Burks doesn't make it here, that he will be provided another opportunity elsewhere, and maybe that'll go better for him than this one has. Because, Lucas, it's tough for me to blame him for any of it because I consider 90% of Treylon Burks' issues to be just poor luck.
Yeah.
He's just hurt.
And the circumstances he cannot help, who he was brought in to replace, right? That's what it was. They traded A.J. Brown. They drafted Treylon Burks. He was A.J.'s replacement. Those circumstances were not his fault. It's a big year for him.
I don't know, because I see some comments in the F&M Bank chat, and you can interact on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch if you want to. Jim freaking Nance, not that guy, because is Jim Nance still doing the Masters, right? He's just not doing the NCAA tournament? Of course he's doing the Masters.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think Jim Nance is going to die on that television broadcast.
He's not today.
Right, because this is ESPN's day, yeah?
Yes, and the coverage won't begin until this afternoon.
So, it's a situation. Anyway, Jim freaking Nance says in the YouTube chat, his NFL career is down to this year to prove it. And I disagree. I think Treylon Burks is probably going to get plenty more opportunities. Like I said, he's a first-round pick. Somebody give him a job. But here, they need more production from him. There's not a higher profile player on the roster with more to prove than Treylon Burks. You could argue Will Levis, I suppose, but Will Levis has already acquitted himself far more than Treylon Burks has in his short NFL career.
And you're hinging a lot on Will Levis right now. He's acquitted himself enough to where you have confidence in, we're going to move forward with this for better or for worse. Can't really say that about Treylon Burks. Nothing's being hinged on Treylon Burks at the moment in terms of it feels like it's a very house money vibe, right?
Oh, they could phase him out so easily. So easily.
It's like if you get something from him, oh, awesome. Then you just layer in another piece to this offense. But if not, like we're planning for that to not be the case, it seems.
So he's at best right now, he is maybe the third best option on the team, though I would still consider NWI the third best option on the team.
More reliable, yeah.
More consistently reliable, a more consistent playmaker. I know Treylon Burks has a couple of games where he's had big, not even big, but 76 yards here against the Chargers, or I think he was north of 100 yards against the Packers on that Thursday night football game. But I can count them. I can basically count on one hand the amount of games that Treylon Burks has had a meaningful impact in through 2 years as an NFL player, coming off a year where, again, he got hurt and had less than 250 yards receiving, less than 225 yards receiving.
That's not a strong statement. That's not a debatable thing to say Nick Westbrook-Akine is the more reliable third option as a receiver than Treylon Burks. It's not the more physically talented or biggest potential or higher ceiling. It's more reliable. I don't know how anybody could dispute that at this point.
People have already started in on him, though. Have you noticed?
On
Treylon.
What do you mean started in on him?
I brought this up to you the other day. They took the video of the arrivals. And I said, did you see Treylon? It's just a video of him walking from his car in the parking lot to the facility, and he's wearing a sweater, okay? But immediately, and it's not just because I've noticed a couple in the YouTube chat today, immediately people pounced on him because he looks a little thicker. They're already going to count him out or be down on him as they are well within their rights to do. But Treylon Burks, I don't think that is something. I don't think that you can, because I had somebody bring up earlier, aren't we going to talk about Treylon Burks showing up overweight and what a bad impression that makes on the coaching staff? Well, I would like to know from that person who asked me that on YouTube, what does he weigh? Do you know what he's supposed to weigh? Do you know how much he weighs right now? Do you have any idea that Treylon Burks is actually overweight? Or are you just assuming something because you saw a 0.5-second clip on a introductory or on a walk-in video that maybe wasn't the best angle of him? Nick Holtz, the new Titans offensive coordinator, though not play caller, was asked about Treylon Burks yesterday. This is what he had to say.
Treylon's potential is, very high. First-round pick. Obviously, you can see all the talent, but he's going to get what he earns. You know what I mean? And he's, my 2 days with him, he's been a great guy. He seems like he's learning a lot. He's really taking in, processing all the information, and then when he gets out on the field, it's what he can translate. But he's got a skill set that, he's a big guy who can run and he can make contested catches. And so if he can find a way to do that for us, that'd be a pretty big addition.
Sure. So not groundbreaking analysis there, but very blunt. He's going to have to earn all of his opportunities. Treylon Burks no longer gets, at least here, the first round rite of passage. All right, we're going to try and make him a focal point or try and work him as much into the offense as humanly possible. No, now you're basically at the bottom of the rung with everybody else, not named Calvin Ridley or D-Hop.
Does it mean anything to you that Brian Callahan, when he talked about needing somebody to emerge in the slot, well, why don't we just hear it?
No, I think you're always open to adding to those spots. I mean, we have to have someone emerge for us at the slot position receiver when we're in 11 personnel. That's one that we got some young players I'm excited to take a look at with obviously Kyle Phillips. Mason Kinsey's been around here a little bit. He's shown his mettle. Obviously, Nick Westbrook Akine's been involved in some of those spots over his career. So trying to find someone to emerge in that spot. You got guys that you're trying to always build youth and depth as well. And so those things are in constant flux. You're always trying to have another guy ready to roll. You need depth at every position. That's not just the receivers, but you're always open to those guys. And again, guys that are fast, explosive, and physical, you can't have enough of them.
Does it mean anything to you that Treylon Burks was not a name mentioned there?
Yes.
Because that was a thought a lot of people had initially.
Mason Kinsey got mentioned and Treylon Burks didn't is not inconsequential to me.
Did that not cross your mind? Well, okay, if Treylon Burks, when Callahan was hired, if he's going to have an opportunity to find success in the slot, then this is as good a chance as ever with DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley, and that being where the majority of his best football came in college. He's never gotten the chance to consistently get that chance in the slot with the Titans. And I at least thought, okay, maybe he'll have that opportunity this year. He's not one of the names mentioned by Brian Callahan.
Doesn't mean that there won't be opportunities, just means that that's not initially how they're thinking. Treylon Burks needs to learn how to be Calvin Ridley or DeAndre Hopkins' backup. He needs to learn how to be able to produce because those are going to be the two primary wide receivers out on the field. I'm sure they'll have certain situations where Treylon makes sense to be out there. I'm sure they'll have 3 wide receiver sets where Treylon is involved. But I'm not looking at him as a third piece in the Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins triumvirate here, Lucas. I'm looking at him as if Hop or Ridley goes down, then I'm probably turning to NWI if I'm being honest, and then I'll turn to Treylon Burks.
Or ex-drafted receiver in the upcoming
Correct.
draft. Who is brought in by this staff, not a previous staff.
The groundwork is being laid to not require Treylon Burks' services any longer. And that, whether that ends up being true or not, is entirely upon him to determine. So we will see. We'll take your phone calls coming up next, 615-737-1045. Also, the argument has surfaced from Malik Neighbors, not Marvin Harrison Jr. being the top wide receiver prospect in the upcoming draft. We'll debate.
Below MSRP? Below MSRP. Below MSRP. It's pretty simple. Two Rivers Ford sells all new non-specialty Fords below MSRP.
Mortgage Professionals in Middle Tennessee. Hi, I'm Chuck McDowell, owner of Wesley Mortgage. I'm a true local. Born in Mount Juliet, met my wife at MTSU, and I live in Franklin. While every other mortgage company is cutting back, we're rapidly expanding and investing. Are you sick of feeling like an operations employee to ensure your loans are closed on time? When you look around your office, it doesn't look the same. You're missing people. You're missing your friends. Is anyone having fun? We're having fun every day. As the official mortgage provider of the Tennessee Titans, I've personally recruited the top local operations team to ensure your loans are closed on time. So you get paid. So you get to spend time building your business. And you get to have fun at work again. Now is the time to join our team. To start a confidential conversation with our local president and COO, visit whywesley.com. whywesley.com.
The guaranteed offer is the easiest way to sell your home. It's really simple. We bring you an all-cash offer. You close in as little as 21 days. No home inspections, no lockboxes, no open houses. Go to markspain.com to get a guaranteed offer and start packing.
Welcome back to the show. Vibes are high because it's my Friday. It's not Lucas's Friday. He's got you covered tomorrow and Monday. In the meantime, we're talking some Titans, talking some wide receivers. Need more from Treylon Burks. Coaching staff said as much, that he needs to earn his opportunities, will earn his opportunities, whatever the new look offense actually ends up being and what his role is. He'll be able to determine, provided that he can stay healthy, because that's really the only thing. The problem for me lately with Burks has been when he's been out there, you can't rely on him. He had these awful drops. The Browns game is stuck in my head. I know the game was out of hand by the time they were taking shots deep to him, but just the way a pass that could have changed the game bounced directly off of his hands, which is what he is exactly there to do, to get behind the defense, to get behind the defensive back, to create those opportunities down the field, to use that big body to create these contested catch opportunities, and that he hasn't been able to put that together yet it's unfortunate to see. Now, things that make me laugh are those of you who are trying to trade him, at least with the seriousness of the commenter that I see on the YouTube chat right now, Steve Lamb. He says, I am serious. Okay, it's good to know on the front end. I am serious. I would trade Burks, NWI, and Phillips, plus a 2025 third rounder for another high first, a third, and a fourth, Lucas, in 2024.
What a haul.
Burks is a huge question mark. Phillip is glass, and we can draft a better NWI. Then, mother bleeper, who do you think is going to give you all of those different draft picks when you just listed off all the reasons that nobody is going to trade for any of those players Are you out of your mind? What kind of trade machine rabbit hole have people gotten themselves stuck into? I know the draft process or the pre-draft process is such a long slog, and you start to spin the hamster wheel in your brain about all the different ways that your favorite team can get as many first-round draft picks as humanly possible. But I don't know that I've read a trade scenario as asinine as Burks, NWI, Phillips, plus a 2025 third for another, not just a first, a high first, a third and a fourth in 2024. Sir, marijuana is not yet legal in the state of Tennessee. Put whatever you're smoking at 12:25 p.m. Central Time down. Are you out of your mind?
To be fair to Steve, I too would make that trade. That's all he said. He said, I would do this. Me too, Steve. Sign me up.
Yes, in whatever Madden world you're living in, I would also do that deal. I don't even think that trade would be accepted in Madden.
High first. High first. You're talking about the area where teams are going to be trading up for quarterbacks in the upcoming draft. And wait till you see the haul that teams like the Vikings that are desperate to get back into the top 5 for a quarterback because they feel like they have a roster that can compete and they have nobody but Sam Darnold to do it. See what they give up for a high first to go get a quarterback and then reevaluate your thought of getting a high first for those 3 players.
Steve took a bite of a magic mushroom bar this morning and it's just all floating through all kinds of trade scenarios in his head like they make sense. Out of this world. Get out of here. Bring in the THC. I don't even think pot would be a strong enough drug to make you come up with a trade scenario that unfeasible. Anyway, 615-737-1045 is the number. Scary Harry agrees with me. Pot doesn't make you that high. Cheeseburger has wide receiver thoughts. He's next.
What's going on, Buck? How y'all doing today?
We're good.
I'm good, too. My question is on receivers. I would say I agree with you, Buck, maybe trade Treylon Burks and NWI. But what about maybe drafting Malik Neighbors at the first pick in the NFL draft? You see the Titans maybe going after Malik Neighbors where they're sitting at, and I'll get you talking with that. And, Buck, you got the best show in town, number 1 show in town. Hey, you need to get me in studio, live on radio. I will sing you a rap song. Let's go, Buck Rising. It's the Buck Rising show all day, every day. And Lucas Panzica, let's go. Preds in the playoffs. Let's go. Let's go, Preds, baby. Lucas and Buck all day, every day. Plus, also Cheeseburger joining the show. Yeah, let's go.
Bars.
Plus also Cheeseburger. Love that.
I love Cheeseburger. Cheeseburger's my favorite.
Never disappoints. No, you never know who's going to make the song, too. Preds get a shout-out.
Preds get a shout-out. Florida State, occasional shout-out. D2 Squared says, found Steve's dealer. Just to clarify, Cheeseburger, I don't want to trade Treylon Burks. Well, I mean, I would trade Treylon Burks. I'd trade Treylon Burks for whatever you could get for Treylon Burks. I just don't think that the trade scenario posed earlier by a YouTube commenter makes any damn bit of sense. My favorite about the Cheeseburger calls also, Lucas, are people who hear the Cheeseburger rap for the first time and are unaware that we have Cheeseburger music, specifically when he joins the show, like Jay Breezy, who simply says, what the hell is happening?
It's just the instrumental to country grammar.
That's all it is. Guy's got bars. Okay. Let's go to Mark in Murfreesboro next.
So I would say that our defense is probably going to be the best that it's been in a long time, specifically because our 2 cornerbacks, Snead and Tito. But I just want to, touch on the fact that we haven't had 2 dogs at cornerback in a long time. And then last year we had Sean Murphy Button. He was the best that we had at cornerback, which is ridiculous. And now he's not here. But, I just feel like this is going to be the best defense in the league with just up front. We just need a great linebacker, whether it be in the second round or whatever. What do y'all think we will rank top, 1 through 32, of course, in defense?
Oh, I mean,
a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, I can't. I appreciate your optimism. You're right to be optimistic about the way that they've gone, that they've addressed some of the needs so far. But it's such an incomplete unit right now. There's nothing wrong with feeling good about the Titans defense. They don't have a starting inside linebacker that I trust. I don't trust Kenneth Murray. That contract is still one of the more confusing ones of the offseason, to be honest with you. They don't have another starting safety. Do you know Elijah Molden's already in a contract year? Dylan Radin's already in a contract year? That whole draft class, maybe it's just my COVID brain at this point that everything after COVID feels like it's basically still in the same year. But I just can't believe that we're already in year 4 of Radin's, Molden, and that draft class, given that half that draft class is already gone. And Farley. Oh, my God. That's another discussion entirely. Sebastian Joseph Day is not enough next to Jeff. Arden Key is not enough across from Harold. Defensive needs are a lot more prevalent than they were a month ago in this upcoming draft.
And you need depth all over the place at every position.
I just don't think you're going to be able to get both done this year. Like, you need starters first and foremost. And maybe you get some players to start for you this year who end up being depth down the line as you continue to try and build this roster back up. But the roster is in such a state where I would agree with you. You haven't had quarters that competitive with that kind of attitude since Malcolm Butler, because they called him Street Rat. Remember? Logan Ryan played with a certain kind of nastiness too. Kenny Vaccaro played with a definitive nastiness. And Byard was the playmaker that made a lot of it work. This is going to help your team without question. The kind of secondary that you expect to have. But it's tough for me to give you any kind of prognostication about the Titans defense when the person, they probably don't even know what they're going to really look like with all the personnel questions that they still have. Darrington has been waiting patiently. He's up next. Hey, bud.
Hey, buddy. How's it going?
It's great.
All right, now, I don't know if all your callers are just high or tripping or like, I don't know what the hell they
I just assume, Darrington, and this is probably a bad assumption by me, but because it's the middle of the day, I do assume that everybody's high. I just assume that if you're calling sports talk radio in the middle of the day, that's what you're doing with your time. That's all right.
Sometimes we just get on a run.
We do get on a
run. It happens in bunches.
Maybe they're all sitting in the same smoking circle, that 70s show style, passing around, not just passing that around, but passing the phone around.
Well, yeah, they must be passing some isotope around or something, because I don't think that's just me. You don't say some of the stuff these people are saying. Maybe it's because OJ died.
Now, don't these people, our audience, okay? You are these people. I am these people. Lucas is these people. We are all people.
Okay, I said some crazy things, but I ain't said nothing crazy that do with them all these draft picks, and that was just plain retarded. I don't know what he was looking at.
No, we don't use that word, Darrington. No.
Can't say that.
Can't say that. Ethan Lafayette is next. Hey, Keith.
Hey.
Hey.
Are you there, bud?
Yeah, I am.
I'm just going down the road here. Hang on, let me pull over for a second.
Okay, be safe. I appreciate that, Keith. We will buy you the time necessary to make sure that you pull over and don't cause any kind of traffic issue with your phone call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm also dealing with reception issues here, going up and down hills here.
Okay, that's important.
Listen, Buck, you need to be careful with those drug analogies, man. You know that works both ways. Hey, you know, the government does have a car that actually runs on water. That's an inside joke.
Okay.
What you got, Keith?
Hey, I just wanted to say a few things about OJ, man.
Okay.
I mean, 67 years old. I was blessed. And he was magical. Now, what happened in 94 and from then on, what kind of person he was, I don't really know. But as far as a football player in his prime, he was magnificent. Okay, talk to you guys.
Thank you for the call, Keith. We appreciate you pulling over and practicing safe driving protocol. Scary says hands-free exists. Yeah, well, not all of us have the Bluetooth set up. You don't know.
Don, what's your name?
Your microphone's on, you idiot.
Like we said, happens in bunches.
Is that how you greet people? I've never heard you answer. That's your phone demeanor? Zone, what's your name? Lucas, it's over 3 years. Why are we still so bad at this? Nothing's changed. It's the same technology. It's the same phone lines. It's the same microphones, all the same buttons. Why are we still so bad at this?
When it rains, it pours.
What does that even mean?
Pandora only comes out of the box. Can't put her back in.
Is it a her? I suppose that makes sense. It's funny. Every time I hear the word Pandora, I think of the music app. That's weird. When's the last time you opened up Pandora on your phone?
Probably 2015.
Sue Ann's in the YouTube comment section. She says, Buck, wait a minute. I'm not high when I call in. Maybe I should be. No, we're not advising that. Everybody settle down. Settle down. Let's get it back under control. So, I'll seamlessly pivot here into a clip from the Adam Schefter podcast where Malik Neighbors has been a talking point all draft season long. And the discussion has been about who is, in fact, the best wide receiver prospect of three hugely talented top wide receiver prospects. You know the names. We've been through them a million times. In no particular order. It is Marvin Harrison Jr., it is Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze. Whomever your favorite draft prospect among them is, that's up to your discretion. It's up to your team needs. The most pro-ready of them, I think, indisputably, is Marvin Harrison Jr. That does not guarantee that he will be the best of the three. But it's been interesting to hear guys like Daniel Jeremiah, Adam Schefter, Louis Riddick go back and forth on this topic, specific to Malik Neighbors, having a discussion about who teams think is the best wide receiver prospect in the draft class.
Matt, I want to go back to the wide receivers at the top of the draft because I've actually had people tell me that they think Malik Neighbors could wind up going ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. How do you see the top three wide receivers when I have actually heard arguments on behalf of all three guys, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, and Rome Odunze, all being the number one wide receiver prospect in this class?
Yeah, and that's something back at the Senior Bowl. I had a report in one of our draft notebooks about that a handful of teams at that time thought Malik Neighbors was the top receiver in the class. So I'm not surprised to hear that. You know, I think if the three of us sat down in a room together and watched film on these wide receivers, we would all probably end up with different things we liked about each of them. That's what's happening now. And especially as you scout for an individual scheme like the Arizona Cardinals, you're probably going to want something different than a team like the Buffalo Bills might want or like the Los Angeles Chargers might want. So I think that's where some of the discrepancy comes in is for your scheme, Malik Neighbors with that awesome speed and yards after catch ability might be more attractive to you than, you know, this true vertical receiver who's a great route runner in Marvin Harrison Jr. Or maybe you look at what San Francisco has done with two really like bullies playing wide receiver, and you would love Rome Odunze because you want that 215-pound guy that's just going to dominate on 50-50 balls. So I think some of it comes down to the type of quarterback you have and then the type of offense you run and trying to decide which of those wide receivers best fits what you want. But those are the three. The order they come off the board, I think, will be one of the most fascinating parts of the first round.
Does that change your perception of the discussion at all, Lucas? Because you've been one of the, at least around here, it feels like you've been the strongest proponent of don't overthink it. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., you idiots.
This just feels like the thing, either this or the J.J. McCarthy discourse feels like the thing that's going to dominate the conversation that ends up not mattering and it ends up going the way we thought it would go. Right? Like the Niners are trading up for Mac Jones. You know, they're trading up, and we all thought, that's probably for Trey Lance. Oh, no, but it could be for Mac Jones. Ended up being for Trey Lance. Mac Jones went where we thought he would go. This reeks of that to me. Like, it could be Malik Neighbors. Now it's going to be Marvin Harrison, like it was the entire time from the end of the regular season to the start of the draft process. I could be dead wrong. That's just what this feels like to me because we do this every year with one or two big-time prospects.
You know, I look at it the same way kind of as I do when people make draft comp comparisons. When you see the draft comp comparisons that, like, for example, NFL.com will do this a lot. What prospect is this player being compared to in years past? Maybe it's a corner and they'll compare him to Marshawn Lattimore. Maybe it's a wide receiver. They'll compare him to A.J. Brown. We'll just use an example. That doesn't mean that those players are going to turn into A.J. Brown. or Marshawn Lattimore or, I mean, isn't the draft comp for Caleb Williams Patrick Mahomes?
Oh, who's the poor Pittsburgh defensive lineman that got all those graphics with him next to Aaron
Cansey? And he's a good player.
He's a fine
not
player.
Aaron Donald.
But poor Kalijah Cansey, all throughout draft night, the measurables, the school, it's like, why do we have to do that to the guy?
Well, but it's consumer error, Lucas. I really do think that it's about the way that you hear these football people when they talk about this. Greg did this the other day when we were breaking down wide receivers on the podcast. He said that Ladd McConkey, the Georgia receiver, as a prospect, reminded him of Cooper Kupp coming out of Eastern Washington. It does not mean that Ladd McConkey is going to be Cooper Damn Kupp. It does not mean that Ladd McConkey is going to be an MVP candidate potentially because he's had such a spectacular season at the wide receiver position. It just means that coming out of Georgia, he looks a lot like Cooper Kupp did coming out of Eastern Washington before he was ever MVP candidate, Offensive Player of the Year, Cooper Kupp. That, I think, is a mistake on the way that we receive the information that the football people are trying to give us. And honestly, I think this conversation is just a different version of that. Last call for phone calls. If you got them, 615-737-1045 is the number. We'll update the polls, get you over to Blaine and Mickey coming up next. All right, last segment for me for the week. I'm out of town until Tuesday, heading on down to South Beach. Taking a buddy's wedding, spend an extra couple of days. 85 degrees, although the weather back here in Middle Tennessee is supposed to take an upturn right about the time I get back. Next week looks gorgeous. But Lucas has you guys covered. Tomorrow, Kim Caldwell on the show, the new Lady Vols coach. Who else you got? Coach Mack?
Coach Mack every Friday, as is the custom. Adam Sparks will hop on at 12:20 to preview the Orange and White game, which is this Saturday.
There you go. So Lucas will do a great job with that on Friday and Monday, and I'm sure you guys won't miss me at all. Of that, I'm certain. Last call for phone calls. Phil is in Gallatin up next. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Buck. Nice to hear from you again. It's been a long time. Happy Miller Lite to y'all. And I was thinking about something when Cheeseburger called in. It's just not a cheeseburger without a Miller Lite. So just want to throw that out there.
Where have you been? Have you been drinking too many Miller Lites? What happened? I feel like I haven't heard from you in like 6 months.
Well, I kind of went on a little fast there, but then anytime I go on a fast, it seems like I drink even more when I get back on it. So try not to do that too much.
Okay.
Did a dry March.
Right. So let me just say this. I was thinking about, y'all brought up the OJ, rest in peace OJ, and then the Treylon Burks. It reminded me of what his lawyer, OJ's lawyer, said, Johnny Cochran. He said, if it doesn't fit, it must have quit. And I'm feeling that way about Treylon Burks. It's time to make another decision, because how long are we going to keep on putting up with this and just hoping he turns around? I don't know. I was kind of burnt out long ago. I don't know how you feel, Buck, but just want to hear what you had to say. I hope you have a safe trip.
Thank you very much. It's good to have you back, Phil. Happy Miller Lite to you. Yeah, I mean, he's only been here for 2 years. It's been a frustrating 2 years. I understand Titans fans' frustrations. I don't have any doubt that he's not trying as hard as humanly possible to make this thing work. And this is the definitive year for Treylon Burks as a Titan. That I'm willing to say. Absolutely. Quick question, given that I did say I'm going to be traveling here coming up, do you have TSA PreCheck?
I do. It is life-changing.
It is. So the question to you in the audience to end the show, if you have TSA PreCheck, but your significant other or your family, if you travel with your family, does not have TSA PreCheck, do you leave them in steerage to go through the long and winding lines by themselves, to go through TSA PreCheck by yourself, or do you make the ultimate sacrifice and get in the conventional security line with the unwashed masses?
It's not going to sit. The whole point of PreCheck is to save you time, correct? Mm-hmm. If you're traveling with someone and you're just going to have to wait for them to get through the security line anyway, I don't see the point.
Wrong. Immediately wrong. I can do a million different things. Grace is going on this trip to Miami with me. She does not have TSA PreCheck. I have TSA PreCheck. I will not be waiting. I will not be going through the normal security line with Grace. I will go and I will get us both a coffee. Hell, I'll have time to get us breakfast. We can get a good seat at the gate. We'll be ready to go by the time she gets through the conventional security, but it will not be me waiting in security. I don't think anybody should have to do that. I feel like if you are smart enough to have TSA PreCheck, then everybody else should have to suffer the consequences of not having TSA PreCheck. These are the rules.
Always a gentleman.
I'm going to get coffee.
She's so lucky to have you.
Polls.
All right, Dan. I reckon I'll talk about a poll update. This is Carl Childers. There's a young feller. I think he's got the final numbers. Here's the producer of the Buck Rising show. A feller named Lucas Panzeker. Got any mustard and biscuits?
Presented by Two Rivers Ford, the South's most trusted Ford dealer. Where should Kentucky turn if Scott Drew turns them down? We tweeted this at 9:34 this morning. Just minutes later, he did turn Kentucky down. Karen says Bruce Pearl. Browning says Burt. And Mason says Rick Pitino.
I would like to advocate for Burt to be the next coach of the Kentucky Wildcats. Nothing would make me happier. To get him out of my life, it would make Kentucky terrible.
Who is your favorite wide receiver in the NFL draft? John says it is Malik Neighbors. David says it's Rome Odunze. Cyrus says the one people are telling me should be my favorite, so I have about 18 of them. And Shelby says Ricky Pearsall. Karen was the only one who said Marvin Harrison.
Really? The only person to say Marvin Harrison.
Everyone said something different.
Does that surprise you?
Yeah. Yeah, it does. But I don't know. People could look at that as, who's the favorite receiver that I want the Titans to go after? Because most people assume the Titans will not have the opportunity to draft Marvin Harrison. Like a Ricky Pearsall. Nobody's saying Ricky Pearsall. We should have asked, who is your number one wide receiver in this draft? Not your favorite, because nobody's going to say Ricky Pearsall is the best receiver prospect. But if you sold Titans fans on Ricky Pearsall at 38, I think a lot would buy that.
Don't get mad at me. You're the one who writes the polls.
I'm not mad. I'm just talking.
Okay.
What was your biggest takeaway from Titans coach's press conference? Goody says Mike Vrabel would have had a stroke talking that much. And Titan 822 says they seem to want to talk, unlike a certain coach we had recently.
Mike hasn't talked that much in 6 years. Lucas looked up at me at some point at the Hattie B's thing yesterday and goes, Callahan's still talking?
I love it, man.
I read through those transcripts yesterday trying to catch up on stuff. Just paragraph after paragraph. I'm exhausted just reading it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
It is. It's engaging. It is refreshing. Like I will admit, I enjoy listening to Brian Callahan's press conferences, and I used to enjoy listening to Titans press conferences just because you didn't know whose head Mike Vrabel was going to try to chop off.
Somebody was going to get got.
But I feel like I learned something every time Brian Callahan talks about football, and I appreciate that. Do you leave your significant other / family in the security line if you have TSA pre-check and they don't? 66% are saying yes.
Yes, that is the right answer. If you are smart enough to be forward thinking, it's what, $80 for like 5 years to not have to take off your shoes, to not have to mess with your belt, to not have to take all the laptops and iPads and whatnot out of your bag, to just walk through and be in and out in 15 minutes. Of course you leave them. Of course you leave them. Which is why somebody in the F&M Bank chat says of me leaving Grace tomorrow when we fly to Miami. AJ Parkinson says Grace will come off that security line with a new boyfriend.
Yes. Name a more aesthetically pleasing sports event than the Masters. Couple F1 answers. Mike Herndon says he still prefers the Masters, but the Monaco F1 race, very cool visually.
Aesthetically, yes.
Oh, my God. V-Love says the Austrian Grand Prix, also just the scenery in Austria at the Grand Prix is unbelievable. And David says Checkered Kneeland on the third Saturday of October.
Okay.
And those are the polls.
You know what? I'll go with him on that. I was going to laugh at the checker kneeling one. I respect it. It's a really cool thing. It's a really cool sight. It's something that you should enjoy and appreciate. So I'm glad you did. That's going to do it for me this week. Have a great rest of your week with Lucas and into the weekend. I will talk to you guys next on Tuesday when I'm back in studio. See y'all.